Senator from Ohio.
Thank the senator from South Dakota. At the conclusion of President Trump's impeachment trial, I heard some of my Republican colleagues, most of whom I consider my friends, say that the president would be chastened by impeachment. Some of you told me you knew what he did was wrong. A number of Republicans told me they admit to me that he lies a lot. They would acknowledge extorting an ally for help in the 2020 presidential campaign wasn't bad enough to rise to the level of warranting removal from office, even though Richard Nixon never did that, even though just on the face of it, thinking of soliciting a bribe from a foreign country to help you in your re-election as President of the United States is worse than untoward. But you told me, many of you on the Republican side, that holding the trial was enough to check his bad behavior. You said things like this. And these are quotes, but I will not mention who they were because they were private conversations. You said, I think he's learned he has to be a little more judicious and careful. Some of you said these publicly, too. A reporter asked another one of you whether Trump might see acquittal as a license to do it again, and you responded, I don't think so. One of my colleagues said, I think he knows now that if he's trying to do certain things, he needs to go through proper channels. Another colleague said, the president has been impeached. That's a pretty big lesson. I believe that he will be more cautious in the future. Well, the president learned a pretty big lesson. The lesson he learned because every single person, from the majority leader down the hall to every Republican sitting at this desk, in this desk, and this desk, every Republican except for Mitt Romney voted to acquit. Every single Republican voted to acquit. So the president, the lesson is he can do whatever he wants. He can abuse his office because he will never, ever be held accountable. One Republican had the courage to stand up and do it. Every other Republican sitting at these desks said to the President of the United States, yeah, it's okay. You've learned your lesson. Yeah, your lesson is that you can do whatever you want, and this body will never, ever hold you accountable. So, you know what? And I thank the presiding officer, by the way. You know what? The president's gone on what we call a PR tour, a personal retribution tour, starting at the prayer breakfast the next day when he attacked and he attacked and he attacked all kinds of people, continuing through to his speech in the East Room, where many of my colleagues were in the audience clapping for the president when the president made these attacks on people. They say he'll never do it again. Even if we vote to acquit, he'll never do it again. But then they clap for him when he starts his personal retribution tour. He removed Colonel Vindman, a patriot, a Purple Heart recipient who spent his life serving our country. He was an immigrant. He left the Soviet Union. He wanted freedom. He served in our country's military. The president, when he attacked Colonel Vindman, he mocked his accent. Okay, he grew up speaking Ukrainian, and his English is damn near perfect when I've listened to him, but he had a bit of a Ukrainian accent. He mocked his accent, and then he suggested he could be subject to military prosecution. He removed Ambassador Sondland, who was a Trump appointee, after he testified to the quid pro quo. And yesterday, President Trump continued his PR tour, his personal retribution tour, interfering at the Department of Justice. I'm not a lawyer, Mr. President. I know the presiding officer is. Most of my colleagues on both sides of the aisle are. But they know a president doesn't interfere at the Department of Justice. So as part of his personal retribution tour, he's interfering there. He's strong-arming appointees to overrule the decision of career prosecutors. You know what? These career prosecutors withdrew in protest. One of them resigned from the department. More on that later. Then late last night, when the country's eyes were on New Hampshire in the primary there, the President of the United States, part of this retribution tour that my colleagues said, oh no, he's learned from impeachment. Well, he hasn't. He's learned he can get away with stuff. The president yanked his own Treasury nominee who was working on terrorist financing and financial crimes, former U.S. Attorney Jesse Liu, who had worked as U.S. Attorney for the District of Columbia, who had worked on, among other things, oversight of prosecutions from Special Counsel Mueller's investigations. Treasury Department has offered zero explanation. I'm going to get a chance in a few minutes to ask the Treasury Secretary, coming in front of my committee, for why they were withdrawing her nomination 48 hours before her confirmation hearing. We can take a guess at why President Trump pulled down her nomination. She oversaw the U.S. attorneys prosecuting President Trump's criminal associations prosecuting President Trump's criminal associates, his political operatives, like Rick Gates and Michael Flynn and Roger Stone. I mean, the president, this is so obvious. I mean, what the president's done, there were people out there that displeased the president. One of them doing his public duty, career military, immigrant from fled the Soviet Union, speaking under oath about what the president has done because he knew it was wrong to solicit a bribe from a foreign country. Another was a lawyer that oversaw the prosecution of some of the president's political operatives, political hacks, criminals, as it turned out. They oversaw the prosecution. The president is attacking them. The president is using his power to attack him. And my colleagues who sit at this desk, and in this desk, and this desk, and this desk on the Senate floor, my colleagues think it's okay to acquit him and then tell me that he is going to quit acting the way he acts? No sentient human being, Mr. President, including the presiding officer, would possibly think that way. She was scheduled, Ms. Liu was scheduled to testify under oath before members of both parties at our hearing in the Banking Committee tomorrow morning. We need answers as to what she would have said. Were there decisions she was part of as U.S. attorney involving the president's associates that he didn't like? Was he afraid more would come out about the president's, the actions of some of the president's associates, the criminal actions? Was she aware of efforts by the president and his political appointees to interfere in the impartial operation of our justice system? We need a swift and thorough DOJ Inspector General investigation of these prosecutorial decisions. With every passing day, Mr. President, we don't see a humbled president. We see a president unleashed. Again, he didn't learn a lesson from impeachment. Well, actually, he learned a lesson from his acquittal. The lesson he learned is he can do whatever he wants. He's a president unleashed. He's bent on turning the arms of a government supposed to serve the American people into his own personal vengeance operation. His own personal vengeance operation. I mean, implore my colleagues, we can't let that stand. The Department of Justice is supposed to be impartial, immune from political influence, but it's become no more than a personal weapon, or it's becoming, it's not there yet, but it started to be, potential weapon the president can unleash on his political enemies. As I said, I'm not a lawyer, but I know enough as president to know the Department of Justice and the executive branch are not there to serve the president of the United States. The Department of Justice and the executive branch are there to serve the same people we do, the people of Ohio, the people of the presiding officer's state of Utah, the people of Maine and Iowa and Tennessee and every state across this country. No one should be above the law.